Here we go. Yes, I remember to record this time. So here we are recording. I'm interpreting the United States chart, birth chart, as well as see how much time we have, but I think that we will. And I also did Donald Trump's because I just thought that that would be just kind of a perfect companion here to what I'm doing. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I'm going to share my screen. Let me get my screen share here. And I am going to, let's see, which one do I want? I want just the United States. Yes, so here we go. All right. So tell me if you're seeing this chart right now. Do you see a little cursor on it? I can't hear you, Sharon, because you're muted.
Yes, I can see it. This is Katana.
Oh, thank you, Katana. Okay, so I'm going to make that bigger for right now. Now, can you see it? It's pretty big. Okay, so
that's better.
Okay, good. Sharon, you're muted, so I can't hear you. You're gonna have to unmute yourself. Hang on, let me go unmute. There we go. Go ahead, Sharon.
Well, unfortunately, I came back to my home screen and I don't know how to get back to you.
Oh, okay.
I might have to, I don't even know how to get there.
Okay, you might have to go
hold on.
Back out. Well, I'm going to keep going. I want to keep
going.
So, okay, so here we go. Good. So here is the chart of the United States. And I know many of you are familiar with the birth chart in general. But there's a couple things here that I want to point out. And I'm going to look at the big three, what's considered to be the big three of the United States. So that is the sun sign of United States, the moon sign, and the rising sign. Okay? So hang on, let me see. Admit, we got somebody else coming in. There we go. Okay, so here we go. Our sun sign, let me move this out of the way. Our sun sign is a Cancer. So we know that Cancer is the archetypal mother. And you know, United States is very much is seen so much as like, you know, we're here to take care of everybody. We're always taking care of everybody. At least that's kind of been, you know, the overriding theme for us. And sure, there's maybe, you know, some discrepancies in that of people not wanting to take care of other people. But basically, at a very archetypal level, at a very primal level, our country is the archetypal mother. Now, we also have another component here, which is the moon. And the moon is the emotional aspect of self, right? And so the moon is not in Cancer, it is in Aquarius. Now, the Cancer is a water sign, so it's very much about the soul and emotional realm. So it's a very much of a feeler. But the moon, which is the emotional, rules the emotional side and rules the flight or fight, the survival level, is in an air sign. It's an Aquarius. And so with Aquarius energy is very much in his head. It's all about linear thinking. It's about logical thinking, rational thinking mind. So imagine that. Imagine an individual or even yourself, whereas there's one aspect of you that's very emotional and watery and feeling and wants to take care. And yet this other side that says, but is it practical? You know, does that make sense? You know, there's this very much this kind of push and pull energy of air energy, emotional, detached versus very attached emotion. So I'm going to kind of let you guys start putting these things together for yourself, and just I'm interested to hear what comes up. So the third aspect of this that I want to look at is over here is the rising sign, and that's in Sagittarius. Now the rising sign in the chart is the role that an individual plays in order for it to fit in and to feel like it's part of the group. So Sag rising, what is that? Well, that's someone that says, I've come here to save the day. I'm happy-go-lucky. Let's supersize life. Let's make things big. Let's be adventurous. You know, and we're very much very much considered to be the United States a very excess. Like we have so much excess in our life, and that's such Sagittarius energy when it's being expressed in a very unconscious way when it's a rising sign. Okay. So there's these three elements that we have. We have fire, which is Sagittarius. We have air, which is the Aquarius energy all in the head. And then we have this deep Cancerian archetypal mother energy that goes on. Okay. Does anybody have any comments about that real quick before I move on? Because I'm going to tie that in right now.
Just it's totally cool. It's so interesting. It's great. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So the other thing about a chart is, there's so much to get into, and, I have an hour, so I want to get as much in as I can. The other aspect of astrology is also the transits. So that's what's occurring right now. Like, where is everything right now in the world as we see it, as it relates to the United States? So that's where I want to go now, because this is the big piece right here. So let me pull up the transits. So here we have the chart of the United States along with the transits. Now, can you guys see that right here? Here we go. There it is. So on the inside is the chart I just showed you. On the outside is where all the transits are. And this is where this is where I really want to get into, giving the themes. So here's the thing. We know, and well, I know, and some of you do who have followed me and hear me say this so much. It takes the planet Pluto approximately between 246 years and 248 years to go around the whole entire sun. That Pluto, here's Pluto right here, right in this little spot. Can you see that with the cursor on it? Okay, so there's Pluto. So it has taken it 248 years almost to go around this whole entire chart. So where was that back then? It was back during the time right before we signed the Declaration of Independence, okay? So we are in a big revolutionary cycle here right now. And so where it is in the chart, it's in the second house of the chart, and every house in astrology has a theme. So what theme is that? Well, Pluto, we know that Pluto is the planet of transformation. It's the planet of death and rebirth. It's in the second house. So what is the second house? The second house is the house of values. It's the house of resources. So that's one of the big themes. It's the huge theme that's going on for us right now in this country. It's like we are having to look at our value system. Well, we are not having to. That's what's coming up, is that we are so torn in really getting to the core of what our values are as a nation. And what we can see, the other side of this transit that we're having, is not only just the values, but how are we seeing the values is through shadow, okay? Because the house of values is in the second house. The eighth house is the house of shadow. That's the opposite house. So that's how it is seen through the lens of shadow. So what's being exposed right now is a whole lot of shadow. And through that, we see, hopefully, or not see, what we have created, what our resources, resources we have squandered, what resources are important to us, and what resources that we've had that we didn't even realize that we had, okay? So this is all a big dismantling and tearing down of our value system, because it has become so shadowy. And I'm not just saying this because that's what I think in my own personal opinion. If I was doing this chart right now, I'd be telling this person, you are looking at your relationship to power and how you have dealt with it, and you are seeing it through shadow. And it may not look pretty, because when we're looking at shadow, it's the dark night of the soul. Okay. And this isn't about being negative. This is just about the truth of what the chart is saying. And so you can see there's all these planets that are, hanging around all over. And so it's not only just the theme of values, but where it's hitting for us directly is in our Mercury. Mercury is our mind. It's how we think. It's our belief system. It's our theology. It's even, how we've constructed all of these paradigms of religion and what we say rule is and what we say law is. This is really a restructuring of law, and not just law on the mind perspective. This is law on the cosmic perspective. Because if we look at the higher octave of what the value system is of the second house, it is about spiritual values. And then if we really think even deeper about this, what has gotten us into so much of the turmoil that we are in are all of the differences of religious beliefs that we have in religion itself. Okay, so really what we're trying to break through here is to a higher octave of connectivity, a higher octave of it's not about religion. It's not about the dogma, right? It's about the spiritual connection, all is one. And so in that, that's where the value systems are being challenged. Does that make sense? You guys following that? Any comments? Any input, questions? Not yet? Okay. Let me know when you do. So the other aspect of this is not only do we have Pluto here in the second house, but we have Saturn in the second house. And we know Saturn is the taskmaster. And Saturn has been here. Let me look at my notes. Saturn has been here since the beginning of 2019 in the second house. So we've been dealing with this obviously for quite some time. We're going to continue to deal with this until May of 2022. We'll be looking at our values. And so I'm going to move ahead a little bit because I want to tell you where we're headed in 2022 so you can start to get a feel for this. So where we're headed in 2022 is we're really trying to get into a more of a social connection with each other. So it's not about me and mine, it's about us. And what I find interesting about this is about what the political arena is right now. So I'm looking at Bernie Sanders, and I'm using him because obviously because he's the best example of what I'm talking about here. In this, I'm not saying that he's the one to carry us through. Again, this is nonpartisan, but I want you to look at this, consider this symbolically here and metaphorically, is that Bernie Sanders is for socialized medicine. Okay. And maybe that's not the answer for us right now. But if I've done, I follow a lot of the stuff and I do a lot of research in like who's supporting who. And one of the big things with a lot of the millennials and younger people, and I was just watching on one of the YouTube stations of this young woman who recently wrote a book about how she's in support of Bernie Sanders. And part of that is what she was saying is that, that like the boomers and the older generation is they're looking at socialized medicine as communism, as that we're going to socialize everything. But that's an old paradigm of socialization. They're talking about something where we are taking care of people. And I'm not saying Bernie's the answer. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that where this transit is leading toward how can you become more socialized as a humanity for the United States. So I find this very fascinating, okay? And this is where we're looking at here in the third house. So maybe he doesn't have the momentum, or maybe it's not him that carries us through. But as the generation begins to decay and die, the older generation, the newer generation is wanting something different than what we've had, because that has not worked. That is all part of this structural paradigm, this structural hierarchy of where Pluto's coming in, the planet of death and rebirth, and Saturn comes in, the planet of structure, and says, no, this is not working. This needs to fall. This needs to be destroyed. It's pretty powerful stuff.
It is. Can I make a comment?
Absolutely.
So as you're talking, and we're looking at Pluto coming in, it's been there for a year now. But I also want to think about how it's just didn't boom come in 2019. Things have been working toward that, and in terms of if we take the concept of socialized medicine, which is really about the health of people, which in turn talks about the health of the United States. I think I have to go back to Obama, who was willing to risk doing something different. And of course, and that's moving on to even higher concept, because even though Bernie Sanders looks at himself as a democratic socialist, I think that Elizabeth Warren, as a progressive, was also saying something different. So it's kind of bringing together more people in that whole paradigm of changing the concept of the health of the people. What we call it doesn't really matter. It's how the energies is moving towards, trying to help people become more and more healthy, both mentally and physically.
Absolutely. So let me clarify one thing. So it's been Saturn that's been in the second house for a year. Pluto has been in Capricorn because that's the sign, that those are these signs right here. So it's been in Capricorn, which is about structure and about form. Pluto into Capricorn in 2008 when Obama got into office.
That's right.
Yeah, and so that began the change. The fact that we had an African American president, that was a whole structural change for us as far as what the African American culture had struggled through, and coming to this was a huge piece for that, and somewhat of a healing, I think, for the country on some level. We still have more to do, but looking at our value system, we think about this in terms of our own lives. It's like, okay, that's also what we are assessing here, is our own personal value system and seeing our own shadow. And one of the things that it just came to me like that when the results of the election came through, and we had the president that we have now, is that I knew that what we were looking at was a creation of what we all created, whether we voted for him or not. It was like, this is the manifestation of the shadow. Okay.
Exactly.
And when I get into his chart, you'll see what I mean. And this is, when I say shadow, I know many of you know, but just in case, I want to clarify, this doesn't mean evil or bad, and it could be, but I'm not saying that here. I'm saying what we're not looking at, what we have refused to look at, or what we have just let go. Like, no, we won't deal with that. We won't deal with the homeless people, right? Like, that's shadow. That's part of our shadow right there. We won't deal with what's going on with children in other countries or immigrants and all that. Like, let's everybody take care of themselves. And I get that to a degree. So, this is the fact that it's hitting Mercury, it's dead on. Like this right here, I know, like, this may not mean as much to you non-astrologer people, but I want to point this out just for the impact. Like, Pluto says 24 degrees, you go directly across. Mercury is at 24 degrees. That is an opposition. When Pluto touches in an opposition to any planet, this is like a mind-blowing thing. Like, our mind is being blown. And I think that's what's kind of happening, because the more that things occur in the government, we're going, oh my God, I can't believe that this is happening, and that things have not changed, or nobody's, that we are, I wouldn't say we're normalizing it, but we're accepting it on some level. That's the part that's kind of mind-blowing. So, if this was somebody's chart, somebody would be going through some really difficult times right now. They would be really being challenged right now. So it all makes sense that what we're going through is, we're living in a very transformational time right now. Now, any questions or comments? I'm going to keep moving. No, we're good. Okay. So the other thing about, our chart as the United States is that we are also having another transit where, yes, the shadow is being revealed, but the other thing is that it's like the veil is being lifted. That's another way of looking at it. It's like we have been living in an illusion. And we have been, Dorothy in the Wizard of Oz, and where Dorothy or Toto goes behind the curtain and sees the man work in the great and powerful Oz. It's like, that's what this is, right? We've been living in this illusion that things are good, and they're not. It's like when back in 2008, when we had the whole real estate boom or fall, and everybody was thinking that, hey, look at what I've got. I have all this equity in my house, and I have a big, better new home and all of that. But all that was an illusion. And so that's all part of this. And it can feel, I think that's why some people are feeling very disillusioned right now, and probably feeling in victim, because this is what it's really bringing up for a lot of people, is that victim archetype of that things aren't what we thought that they were. Are we safe? And then now we have the coronavirus, right? So that brings even more of this kind of fear mongering thing. And when Pluto, the planet Pluto's on deck and in a powerful position, which is always in a powerful powerful position, but just when it's really lighting up things in the chart, it is fear mongering. It is, if death comes to your door, that's not, we don't always want to open death. And again, I'm talking about death and resurrection, death and rebirth. But so, it's almost like if we want to look at a co-creative process of life, like we've co-created this. Like, have we co-created the coronavirus? This isn't about blame or fault, but think about it in those terms. Because this is a reflection of ourselves, we the people. Okay, so let me check. Yeah, I'm gonna pull up another chart here. Let me get out of this. There we go. Let's pull that into smaller. There we go. And I'm going to pull up the transit chart here of, I got to pull out of this one. Hang on one sec. This isn't going to let me do it. Okay. Oops, somebody wants to come in. There we go. Sorry, Marilyn, I didn't see that you were trying to get in. Okay, so what I want to pull up now is I want to pull up the chart of the transits of Donald Trump. And let me pull that right here. There it is, transits. Okay, and share. There we go. So can you guys see this chart right here?
Yes.
Okay, we got Donald Trump. These are the transits. So just as the United States has where it's being highlighted, and each of us as individuals, so does Donald Trump. So a couple things I want to point out about his birth chart here, which I find quite interesting. I've done this once before, but I haven't done it since the election. So it's kind of cool to go back and look at it. He has an aspect in his chart here, which is right over here. And this is Saturn and Venus, okay? And wherever Saturn is in our chart is where we feel a sense of inadequacy. We all have it. It's part of what we've come here. It's part of our karma. And he has Venus, the lover, right next to it. So what that tells us has nothing to do with him. I'm just reading the chart as I'm reading the chart. This is indicative of someone who has always felt on some level that he is not loved enough, that this person is not loved enough. He is a Leo rising. Leo in the rising is a performer. So Leo, or the rising sign, is the role that we felt we had, the role that we took on as a child that we felt we had to do in order for us to fit in and also to feel accepted in the family. So Leo being the performer, imagine that. So when I talk to clients who have Leo rising, some of the stories that I hear about Leo rising is that it's someone who was either like the funny person in the house, the jokester, someone who was maybe really studious and got all their work done. So that was what the family expected, right? For you to get good grades. So there's some kind of expectation here. And so the child performs. But the other thing about Leo, and this is Leo's thing, is Leo likes to be special. And so it's going to do these things so that it can feel special in some way. Okay. So, it's like, this is, it's so interesting because it's like, this is so indicative of what I see personally of his personality as is displayed out in the public eye. And so what's happening for him right now with these transits that he's having is that he has Pluto and Saturn on the opposite side of his Saturn and Venus. So what does that mean? So what that means is that, remember, Pluto comes in and blows things up. It comes in and says, okay, you've been hanging with this structure for quite some time. You've been, running this gig for this particular way for quite some time. And it shows the truth. It's the truth teller. So it has a lot to do with him having to deal with his relationship to power within himself. Okay? Does that make sense? I'm going to go in and just make sure I have everybody in here. There we go. Okay, there we go.
That doesn't really make sense to me. Like, what do you mean by he has to deal with his relationship with his power within himself? I wasn't clear what that meant.
Yeah, so how he's using his power, right? How he is using his power outwardly to to make himself feel more empowered. Like, because that's what we will do, right? We will, if we are coming from an unconscious place of trying to feel empowered, we will externally be power over others. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay.
Maybe if we kind of mention the fact that, the whole impeachment process and how he has, how the whole Democratic primary has been all about how to get rid of Donald Trump, that's going to put an energy on him that makes him, in his private world, in his inner world, is going to tap into that little boy. But the way he projects it on the outside, he's going to have to make it even bigger, make it stronger, make it more, I don't know, in some ways volatile, and that's kind of how I'm seeing him.
Right. It's aggressive. And so, and the reason why I say it's aggressive, because his Mars is in fire. So Mars is our warrior, right? When we feel threatened, that's what comes in. Our Mars is our attack. So his Mars is in Leo. And if you think about Leo, Leo is king of the jungle. It needs to remain in authority. So, pardon me?
And special.
And special, right. So, I'm not doing this to like pick on him or anything like that. I'm doing this because number one, to get some clarity on this, but number two, in reading this chart, it's like I'm reading the consciousness of the chart, and so when I when I work with an individual, that's what I tap into. I go into the chart, I get the consciousness of the individual. Am I reading the personality? Am I reading the soul contract? Well, if we're looking at a soul contract here, we're looking at someone who came here to be a change agent for sure. But it's like, how do you use your powers, so to speak? Do you use it from an unconscious place, or do you use it from a conscious expression? And it's pretty obvious based on what we see, and me as an astrologer in observance of this, is that so much of this energy that's being expressed is from a place of fear, is from a place of feeling powerless, is from a need to feel special in some way. I mean, that's just, it's hard not to see that, right? And I mean, so I'm just putting it out there. That's what I see. So here we go. So we have this really vulnerable person, really, his Saturn is in Cancer. Cancer is, again, wherever Saturn is where we feel a sense of inadequacy, or we doubt ourselves, right? So for him, it's in water, it's the soul, it's the emotional world, it's being comfortable with the vulnerability. And in watching the television reports and or the news, I watch YouTube is how I get a lot of my information. I watch a lot of clips from a lot of different things on all networks. And I watch him always defending whatever's going on. And especially with this coronavirus, and I was just telling a friend yesterday, I said, I mean, if he would be the truth teller of saying, hey, we're working on this, we're not sure, I mean, not that we bring in fear, but to be vulnerable about like, hey, it's okay that you don't have it completely together. It's okay to say that what's real. It doesn't mean that that you're less than. It doesn't mean that you're not capable. Right? Because that's vulnerability. And that's part of what he's come here to learn is to be in that vulnerability and to feel safe at the same time. But that other opposite way says, but I need love. I don't feel love. And unless I, exercise myself in this way, express myself in this way, then I'm not going to feel that sense of security. So for him, where his transits are occurring are in the 5th house. Now they're going to be moving out of the 5th house here very shortly within the year. But where they have been is really it's just so aligned here. It's been in the house of self-expression. It's been in the house of how one seeks power through. And that's what we've watched over the last few years. We've watched how he has sought power, outwardly. But where he's headed now as we come into, June of 2020 here is his Saturn right here. This transit is going to cross all over into the sixth house. Now, the sixth house can be a very difficult house. It is the house of discipline. It is the house of routine. It is the house of mishaps. It could be the house of bad fortune sometimes, because it's the mind, body, spirit balance. And so when Saturn comes in, it shines a light of where we have not been taking responsibility. It shines a light of what structures that you've had in place in terms of how you've constructed your life and how it's, systematically moving. When it'll disrupt it and bring it into chaos. The sixth house is the house of chaos and order, both of those things. So whatever's not in order will be seen in chaos, and it feels like a squeeze. It feels like we're being squeezed. When I've had clients in this house and they're going through it, it's a tough house, okay? Because it's kind of almost, it's like the last area here before the sun comes up, right? And we're coming up over the horizon line. So the sixth house can bring a lot of some health issues as well. It can affect your health. Go ahead.
How long will it take Saturn to get to above the horizon?
It'll take 2.5 years.
Oh, wow.
So it stays in a house for 2.5 years. So what was interesting about Trump's chart when he got into office is he had the planet Jupiter crossing over his rising sign. And so what does that mean? Well, Jupiter is the planet of expansion. It's where we're seeing bigger, right? And so if it's going over your rising, it's actually the self has gotten larger. It's like an opening. And so it made so much sense. Like he made it into be the president of the United States when he had this transit of expansion over his Leo. It's like Leo is big. It's puffed up. It feels good, right? Yeah, it's also synchronistic.
It is.
It's also synchronistic. Let's see. Yeah, anybody has any questions or feedback, go ahead and jump in. I want to take a look at my notes really quick and see what else I have here.
Based on what you just said, Teresa, it's going to be very interesting to watch Donald Trump in or out of office. I mean, he's still going to be in office. So it'll be interesting to see how the chart mirrors what, I don't know, anything after June.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is that he's also having a transit with Neptune, which is wherever Neptune is, it brings in confusion. It brings in disillusionment. It's because it is about lifting the veil of illusion. And so that's what'll be interesting to see is how the illusion breaks for him. And because he's out in public, we're going to probably be a part of that, seeing what that is. That's kind of what I just kind of make up of that. And, when people have a Neptune transit, it is an attempt to spiritualize. So that's why the veil is lifted, so that we see the truth and we can spiritualize what we see the truth to be, where we're no longer living in the illusion and the wound of what we have perceived and the narrative that we have made up about our story. So if I was working with somebody and this transit was going on, I would imagine that this person would be doing a lot of healing around some of the things that they thought were true that really weren't true. And typically I'm going to say that,
I'm sorry. So I was just curious because I don't perceive him as someone who's capable of doing those things, those kind of introspective or healing things. So if his chart says one thing and he doesn't look like the kind of person who could possibly do that, how do you make sense of that kind of thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was actually going to go there next to clarify that. Because I was saying if I was doing a chart reading, this is what I'd be saying. But here's the thing is most people who come for a chart reading with me are people that are on a path of this. And so it's obvious that he, in looking at his chart, it's like he is living the fate of this chart. He's not in the destiny of this chart. So that, to answer your question, exactly, he wouldn't see this. I don't believe that he would, unless he had some kind of an awakening of some sort, which I don't know about that. But I wanted to give an example of how this would be if someone was living and wanting to live a more conscious life. Does that help?
Yeah, but on the other hand,
So if he's not willing to do that, and his chart says this is what needs to happen, what are the implications of that?
Well, okay, so exactly. So that's the thing, is because this is all karmic. So this builds, it builds, the hole gets deeper, the way out gets harder. So the thing about the chart always, life, God, source, always gives us that opportunity to transform, to awaken. But when we fail to do it, I mean, you know that in with people that we see, oh, no, I don't have a drinking problem. Oh, no, I don't have a drinking problem. So what's rock bottom? And some people's rock bottom doesn't mean that they transform, and for some people it does. You know, some people it can be just death itself, whether it's spiritual death of themselves, or you know, a literal death. I'm not saying that about him. I'm not doing any of that, but I just wanted to take it to that place. So yeah, just because the chart's saying this is what it's guiding, this is the destiny of it, this is your karma, doesn't mean that person is going to do it. That doesn't mean that's the co-creative process there. We all have the, you know, the ability to choose or not to choose, whether it's conscious choice or unconscious choice. So, you know, the likelihood, if this is my opinion, that he's going to get this, I don't see it. I just don't see it.
So it seems like what you're saying is that creates more and more pressure on him, and when there's more and more pressure on someone, they devolve to their least skillful and least sane ways of being. And so it sounds like what you're saying is that it's highly likely that all this is going to play out in this huge public arena, that he gets more and more crazy.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I don't want to say yes, but I'm going to say I like what you said. You know, that makes a lot of sense. Whether it plays out in the public arena completely, or whether, you know, let's say well, okay, here's the thing about the shadow, because there's so much shadow in this chart here that's up right now, that when the shadow gets trapped and it doesn't want to be seen, it does a few things. It can morph into something else. It can get even bigger in order to, because he's a Gemini, right? So Geminis are all about, like, let's get all these things moving. Let's have all these things happening so nobody can pinpoint exactly what it is, right? It's kind of almost like a smoke and mirror thing. And that's kind of what we've watched, right? Like, okay, and that's what politics does anyway, right? When something big is going down, oh, let's just make this the big thing so nobody's paying attention to that. Then we'll forget about that. So that's kind of what like this energy of Gemini does. It'll just keep moving around so you can't pinpoint anything. And you know, what he has in his chart here, there's a lot of nervous, like, what did I write down? That's not nervous energy. It's kind of like anxiety. It's that compulsive energy, right? That's Gemini. It's like, oh, it's kind of like that. And then he has a planet over here, Uranus, that makes, in Gemini as well, that makes everything kind of frenetic, right? It's like, can't keep still, and they say that he, you know, stays up late at night, or I don't know what he does. He's tweeting at all hours of the night. But there is this very unpredictable energy. And this has a lot to do with his relationship to his mother. This is where this came from. In some way, mother was very unusual or unpredictable or inconsistent, very eccentric. There was just a lot of, like, not a very like predictable type of an energy here with mom. And so mother relates to our emotional world, how we do our emotions or not do our emotions, how we let the emotions get the best of us. So if we're living in our moon, which in my opinion, I feel that that's what he does. He's not in his sun energy so much. He's in the unconscious aspect of the moon. And therefore, it's constantly doing this. He's a fire moon, right? It's either imploding or exploding. I see him explode more than anything. I don't like what you're doing. I'm firing you off with your head. So this is, yeah, I definitely see the unconscious aspect of this chart being played out here. Any comments or questions, actually? Nope. Okay, so let's go. Let me just look at my notes and make sure that I have everything that I want to say about that. Yeah, that was kind of what I wanted to highlight the most about his chart, about the the needing to feel loved, the needing to feel special. He has Mars right here in this position in his chart, where when Mars is on that in that position, this is someone who is a warrior. So he's not going to go down easy. He's just not. It is Mars on the ascendant definitely has a strong bully archetype. It does. And what's being animated for us in our shadow of the United States is these types of things, is like, it's our bully archetype. We've been seeing that for quite some time. There's a big movement there. So it has been a big movement with bullying in school for children, the victim archetype as well. And so, I feel on some level that we are all just as responsible for what we're seeing in different ways for each of us in our lives. And that's part of why I really wanted to get on and talk about this, is that it is important for all of us to own our own shadow as well. And as well as, I really believe and I really see how we are coming into a different time in our life where it is important for us to work from a much more whole, from a much more like whole place within ourselves, where this is no longer about us just working with our five senses and our intuition. This is even us working with the soul of ourself, because this is also about the soul of America. And as long as we stay in this linear, rational thinking, ego-centric way of living, then we will continue to struggle. And I know many of us, and especially those of us that are on this call, are people that are doing the work, right? That we are trying to make the differences that we can. And hang on, let me stop sharing here. There we go. Okay. Hey, Marilyn. And we're in a time of where there are, it's like new laws of creation are being brought forth right now. And it's through this time we are living in a very special time, as difficult as it can be, with everything that's been going on for us. And if you think about, like what I said in the beginning, Pluto has made its round all the way around 46 years. We are right in the middle of, before the Declaration of Independence was signed, there was an 8-year period of struggle. We are right in the middle of that 8-year period. It comes out in 2024. So we have 4 more years. And I mean, how poetic is that it's in perfect alignment with our elections, right? We have 2020, we're doing one, and in 2024, we're doing another one. And we're moving into an Aquarian age. So we're moving into an Aquarian age that says, it's about the whole. It's the age of Aquarius. It's like we're all connected, all is one, humanity. It's a time of recognizing that we're here to be one, big tribe, and no longer just me. So this idea of socializing some things is powerful. It truly is. It's powerful. So one of the questions that a question that I wrote down that I felt like I wanted to share in this webinar was like, how do you use the power of your soul? Like, how are you using that power in your life right now and moving forward? The power of your soul, because that puts us in a different position of where our come from place inside of us. So does anybody have any questions or comments that they want to make? No. Do you, can you relate to what I'm saying? Do you feel what I'm saying in terms of this collective energy that's occurring, and looking at our value systems and resources, and how we are, you know, how we have limited ourselves because of our belief systems around, you know, resources and values and stuff, our material stuff?
Well, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I can really identify with this. I've been actually working in this area for a long time. In '73, I just had an awakening out of a very closed, almost cult-like childhood. And I woke up to what you said earlier, that we all have choice, you know, there was always choice. And so what I've been doing for all these years is following my purpose, which on one level is to create a planet where children can be born to parents who love themselves. And that moved me into the seminar business and beyond. And it's all about the Aquarian age and us owning that we are creating it all. And sometimes that can be really tough. Whatever we criticize on this planet, let's look inside and see where that is seated within us, so that we can clear that up, and then the world will have a chance. And I do see that people are more willing to do that. I mean, over the last 44 years, let's say, that I've been doing this, people didn't even believe that their beliefs had anything to do with their life. And most people nowadays do. So I feel that we are really on the edge of that now, and we just have to hold strong to that instead of being distracted by what looks like it's in resistance to that. Let's not add juice to the resistance. Let's add juice to our purpose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you, Marilyn. Thank you very much. And, you know, saying that, so it just reminded me of this, is that in the transformational process, it's like we are moving from an old pattern, from an old paradigm, from an old archetype to something new. The distortion of the old will actually get bigger and stronger as to pull us back. And it's a painful process. Transformation is a painful process. To let go of one's identity, I mean, I think that all of you have, you know, experienced this on some level in their life at some point. To let go of our old identity is painful. It's scary. It's the unknown. And that's what's being, I think, really highlighted right now, is the unknown of what's going to happen. And so many people become so afraid. But, you know, this is an inertia, this is an evolutionary thing that is moving us in this direction. Yes, we're all part of the co-creative process of it, but we are also part of the evolutionary, like the pieces that are helping to get this to move. And we are fighting it, you know, we are on some level fighting it, and some of us less than others. You know, some will never stop fighting it because they're, you know, that's part of their own karma work. But when in like I said in the beginning of this, when I started going over this chart today, the United States, I got emotional. And I believe that I got emotional because I could feel the pain of the country. I could feel the pain of the chart as I was going through it. And also just that there is I think that there is this level of love, and it's like the Great Mother. That's what it felt like. It felt like the Great Mother is what I was feeling. That it's like when you see something in pain, but yet it's not in pain because it understands. Does that make sense? Yeah. And it was almost like telling me like telling me that it's okay, Teresa, but yet I know it's not okay. at least what we're struggling through, you know, I mean, or this is tough. So,
It
I,
sounds like, it sounds like the way you explained it, and I was thinking about this earlier, wherever there is transformation and loss, there is always going to be grief. And so the pain of grief is something that, you know, we go through many times in our lifetime, and it's very difficult, but we get to the other side. But it is very sad, and it is very painful. Some people get angry, you know. But I think grief is a real positive thing for all of us to reflect on as we go through this transformation.
mhm. I agree. Yeah, thanks, Sharon. I think you're right. I'm glad you brought that grief piece up, because I think there is that. I think there's some disheartenment, if that's a word, that is happening for people, and I think that there's some people, of course, that are feeling like, is there hope? Are we going to make it, or what's going to happen? And I just think it's important for us to really look at the victim archetype within ourselves, because that determines a lot about how we view this, what's happening for us in the United States, and especially with our election. Because if we put ourselves in victim of anything that's going on, we will have that experience. That will become our reality. It will become our reality for sure. That I do know.
So, me being the eternal optimist, I think what happens for me is that the chart is the thing that gives me hope, because the chart is showing me that um, uh, what's happening right now is exactly what's supposed to be happening. So I don't have to feel victimized by it. I could actually be in a little bit of joy,
Yeah.
because that whole concept of, you know, chaos and turmoil, and Trump following his chart exactly, almost in parallel with the chart of the United States. I mean, he is doing us a big favor by doing exactly what we need to be shown, so that all of us who are walking a path can feel, I don't know, I want to use the word empowered and enlightened by it. And in turn, that enlightens every single one of us who are seeking to understand our soul's journey in a way that is going to transmute and transmit into a bigger plane, or a light field, or vibration, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
I really appreciated what Sharon said about joy, because then I immediately thought of the, you know, when you're in labor, you know, you want to have this baby, you really want it, you want to create something new, but boy, there are parts in it when you just say, what was I thinking? And if we can keep our attention on the fact that we're building something new, we're bringing something that's never been here on the planet before onto the planet, then we can transform our feelings about it into, well, okay, so it's really worth it to go through this, and it is a joyful experience, even though it's painful.
Exactly. Yeah. And so that's what, and I thank you for bringing that up, both of you, is that's the thing, is that's why I wanted to do this, is that because I want to give the perspective of we are actually right. We're working exactly where we need to be working right now in this chart. We are at the lower hemisphere of the chart. The lower hemisphere of the chart, those transits, I mean, those houses, they're difficult houses. We're in the underworld of our emotional belly, right? And so because when we come up over the horizon lines, we circle around it. It's like, yeah, now we're seeing that purpose, you know, it all starts to come together. So when 9/11 hit, Saturn was in a position in our chart that was right on our mask, right? It was right on our Sagittarius, on that descendant, or on the ascendant, excuse me. So it was like something cataclysmic was going to hit. I mean, there was astrologers that predicted, you know, if you looked at the chart, what's going to go down? Something's going to break. And look what happened. That's what happened, right? So it was it's like, boom, that was the beginning of us going under into that. That was the marking, us going into that lower hemisphere of the chart at 9/11. It's incredible. It's incredible. So here we are. And as we move through, we're in a process. This is a process. It's happening. If this was your chart, we were working through it, you'd be going, okay, I see where I need to focus. I need to focus on my values, my resources. I'm looking at my shadow. I'm seeing where I'm limited. I'm seeing where I need to take responsibility, where I have it. Yes, Carol.
What's the sun sign of the?
Oh, we're Cancer. We're Cancer sun.
We're Cancer. That's
Yeah.
my.
What would you say, Carol?
Oh, I was going to say, is it like Trump is playing out the shadow of the collective?
Exactly.
Yes. That's what I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, here's the other thing. We're getting close to the end of time. We are at the end of time, but because I want to let you guys out on time, is that if this election goes where he is voted out of office and we have another candidate, my hope is that we don't go to sleep again.
Right.
That would not be good for us to say, oh, okay. It's like, no, because what woke us up was this happening. This woke us up.
But is it waking up the collective?
Well, it is waking up a lot more. Yes, I believe that it is.
I do.
Yeah, I believe that it is.
And
Just
So when you said, pardon me, but when you said this happened, what woke up the collective, this happened, do you mean Trump's being elected and how he's acted since then? Is that what you're talking about?
yes,
Yeah.
that's what I'm talking about. Yes.
You know, what's interesting to me about everything that's been said, and Sharon, I really appreciated what you said, is that it just really confirms what what I feel like I've been observing and seeing. I mean, there's nothing here that surprised me in the least. It just felt like a really wonderful affirmation of how I see things unfolding. So it's been a really, really positive experience. I really appreciate, Teresa, you're doing this for us.
You're welcome. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're welcome.
can I add one more thing?
Yes.
And I'm not predicting anything either, but say for instance, Trump does win this next election. I think after what Teresa has shown us today is that we can kind of, I don't want to say rest assured, but I want to say let's be mindful and observant to watching Trump and his cabinet do whatever it does, because it's going to be in a downward spiral in some ways after June, is how I'm understanding this chart. Am I understanding this correctly? And so, staying compassionate and on our path is going to really be important to understand our values of compassion at some point too, I'm thinking. I don't know. I'm just, this is just what's coming out of my head right now. So that's just what I wanted to contribute. Don't freak out if he gets elected, is what I'm trying to say.
Right. And again, just to repeat myself one sec, Carol, is that if he does not get elected, don't think that we're done. No,
Yeah.
we're just breaking it. Okay. Go ahead, Carol.
The economy. Any insights on that in relationship to this?
Well, so the second house of resources, that is the economy, right? So that's what's feeling very uncertain, because we are under, there's two things. I'm going to mute whoever, I don't know who.
Oh, I'm sorry, that would be me. I'm so sorry. I lost track that I wasn't muted. You can all hear me.
Okay, there we go. So yes, so the second house is about resources. And so when I've just had this transit, I'm actually coming out of this transit right now. So it can go a couple ways here, because it can be like, oh, we have some renewed resources. Now we have a plethora of resources, but are you squandering them? So at the end of this transit, as we come into, we still have, what did I say? I said the time frame on this was May of 2022. So it will be interesting to see what we end up doing with our resources. And I think that this election is going to determine who gets in office, what happens with our resources. So that is really to be determined. Yeah, this is about money, resources, all the same thing, value, our personal worth. without a doubt. Yeah,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Okay, well, I want to end on time, honor your time, my time, and I want to say thank you for sharing this with me. I was so excited to do this, and this is being recorded, so I will be sending this out to you. So you can have a copy if you want to, listen to it again, whether it's the video or just the audio.
And you're fine with us distributing this to other people? Because I think this is so terrific. I would like to share it with others. Is that okay? Or
Yes, I am. And I should have done this in the beginning, but I get so caught up in my work that I don't. But I just want to say, I am an astrologer. I am also a spiritual life coach. And for anyone who's on this right now, I'm giving them a 20% discount on a reading. Well, we could take a look at how these transits are affecting you and your chart, and a chart reading in general. And I know you guys have my information, my contact, and I'd be happy to do that. So, and I know some of us are going to be working together anyway in the near future. So, okay. All right.
thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yep.
Okay. Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.